In this supplementary video for the session Wondering at Creation, there are three things that I want to talk about. First, and most briefly, I want to say that all the pictures that were part of the session are pictures that I took. And the reason that I want to mention that is because this is my way of wondering at creation. There's lots of other ways to wonder at creation, but we live at a wonderful time. And the Hubble Space Telescope has not only been a great scientific success, but it's probably inspired wonder in more people than any scientific project in history. So if you want to expand on the visual impact of this session, you probably can't do any better than to just do an internet search on Hubble Space Telescope images, and there'll be lots of material there that you can draw on and use. Secondly, this session attempts to give some sense of the immense size of the universe. Some people could conclude from that, or at least get a feeling from that, that our individual lives, our humanity in general, or even our planet are vanishingly insignificant. I think here we need to be reminded by Psalm 8 that there is also a reason for wonder at being human. As beautiful and as fascinating as all of those distant galaxies and nebula are, the Earth is still the most interesting place that we know in the whole universe, because this is the one place that we know life exists. As mind-boggling as the number of stars are, we need to remember that there are more neurons in a single human brain than there are stars in our galaxy. Even with all of the beautiful and complex structures and processes in the universe, the most complex system that we know about anywhere is human relationship and human society. So there is great honor and wonder in being human, which is part of what Psalm 8 affirms, and certainly part of what we want to reinforce with our youth. The session also talked about the developing story of the universe, moving from the Big Bang to the galaxies and solar systems and planets that we have today. That's a story of a universe that moves toward new and greater complexity. That sense of growth and of growing complexity in the universe is a part of what God declares to be very good in Genesis 1. I think that we can suggest that this cosmic movement toward complexity is reflected in the developing and increasingly complex lives of our youth as they mature and take on more responsibility. We should honor that, and we should help them to see that as a good thing too, because it isn't always easy. I think that looking at the universe does instill wonder and a sense of perspective, but it does not make life on this planet, including our individual human lives, insignificant at all. In fact, some sense of just how big and interconnected the cosmic story actually is can give us a better sense of the honor and the wonder of every human life as a part of that story. And we will want to make sure that that point is not lost as we explore these things with our youth. The third and final thing that I want to mention is the claim that I made throughout this session that we find God working through very natural processes, through the sort of things that science can investigate and understand. That doesn't mean that science encompasses the whole of reality, and certainly not the whole of God's reality and God's activity and love. That's why I also suggested that it is up to the church to tell this story of the universe as the story of God's grace. However, there is an important theological principle at stake here. At least since the time of St. Augustine in the 4th and 5th centuries, the great theologians of the church have said that God works primarily, and in fact almost exclusively, through the very natural systems and processes in this world. And so, for example, Augustine had no problem thinking that life on earth developed out of the non-living stuff that God had made in the beginning. Augustine thought that there were very few exceptions of this working of God through natural processes. Augustine thought that one exception might be that very first creation out of nothing that established the basic properties of the physical world. Jesus' resurrection from the dead was another exception for Augustine. And in the context of this lesson, we might think about that resurrection as pointing ahead to the different physics of God's new creation, where death and decay will not be the end, as they are in the universe right now. But other than those rare exceptions, theologians like Augustine have thought that God works through the things of this world. Now that's a very sacramental understanding. And because of that, I think the Lutheran tradition has some deep resources for thinking and talking about all of this. Just as God uses water and bread and wine to accomplish God's grace in our lives, so too we can think about the Big Bang and about cosmic development and the dynamics of biological evolution as ways that God is also at work in the world. It seems to me that that is likely to be how our youth experience God's presence in their own lives, through very natural things like parents and family and friends, through serving their neighbors and worshiping with their congregations. There are times when various well-meaning Christians aren't so clear about that, and they tend to talk about God's presence and God's activity more in terms of miracles that happen outside of the normal physics of the world. But in the end, I think that doing that simply makes God seem more absent from the daily rhythms of our lives. Elizabeth Johnson wrote a really excellent book called Ask the Beasts, Darwin and the God of Love. And she wrote this: "The Creator makes all things and keeps them in existence from moment to moment, not like a sculptor who makes a statue and leaves it alone, but like a singer who keeps her song in existence at all times." And I think that's a great image for what it means to confess God as the Creator. In the story of Genesis, God breathes life into the human. And God keeps breathing that life into the whole universe, not by stepping in to suspend the ongoing physics and the processes, but by being always and everywhere faithfully present. We can and we should help our youth to see that more sacramental, daily presence of God at work through the normal stuff of their lives. And I think that claiming the whole cosmic story as the story of God's continuing and creating love can be an important and helpful part of doing that.